Hey guys, this is Joshua here, and welcome back to another video. Sorry, I've been focusing on school and stuff instead of videos, but I'm going to be reviewing a lot of movies that I saw. I just didn't post a video onto the channel about them. So today I'm going to be reviewing The Batman, and The Batman was far and away my most anticipated movie of the year. I was so hyped for this movie. All the trailers absolutely blew me away and looked so good. This seemed like exactly the kind of Batman movie that I wanted. And did the movie live up to my expectations? Yeah, pretty much. It's essentially the perfect Batman movie. Not the perfect movie, but the perfect Batman movie. This is the one that was felt the most true to the character ever from the moment it opened and until the credits rolled. In pretty much every aspect is a love letter to the character, and at the same time, it manages to feel completely different from any other Batman movie, which is a very good thing. It's less of like a big action spectacle and more of like a detective serial killer investigation movie, which the Batman's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, so that's pretty much the perfect approach for a Batman movie. And Robert Pattinson is awesome as a new Batman, and probably the best portrayal of the character yet. Most Batman movies focus in on Bruce Wayne as his secret identity to how Batman is his mask. In this movie, Bruce Wayne is the mask, and Batman is pretty much who he really is. This persona has essentially consumed him. He's really this vigilante who takes out his anger for what happened to his parents on that fatal night in the alleyway on the criminals of Gotham and tries to make the city a better place through violence and fear, as opposed to being a rescuer and using what he really has to help the people. I think that's probably the most accurate way to portray the character, and it makes for a really good character arc, and Matt Reeves just found an amazing direction to take this movie. And speaking of which, just the whole direction, like, Matt Reeves just did an incredible job of bringing this movie to the big screen. And that the way he visualizes everything and the way he directs each scene. It's very intriguing and creative. It has this atmosphere that's just sort of, it has like this dark, classical, kind of creepy, odd vibe to it that I thought was really special. It's a very long movie, but Matt Reeves' directing keeps everything interesting, so you're never really bored while watching this movie, which is a good thing since it is quite a long movie, but it doesn't really feel that way. It's so creatively visualized and imaginative. It's very stylized, but not in your face. The style doesn't distract from the story. And one excellent example of a super well directed scene in the movie is actually Catwoman's introduction, which I think is like, I don't see a lot of people talking about it online, but I thought it was pretty much a perfect scene, and I don't think it gets enough credit. It's just the way he put together is just brilliant, and it's probably the scene I thought about the most from the movie. Matt Reeves also has a very good eye for action. It's all the action scenes are very well shot, especially the penguin chase shown in the trailers. There's also one hallway scene with Batman, and it kind of rivals the Darth Vader hallway scene from Rogue One. If that's not a pretty, I don't know what is. And so, for the villain, we have the Riddler, who is a very interesting character that we haven't really seen done right. At least, I still don't think they've done him right, actually. That is because in this film, he is done more than right. And he doesn't actually have a ton of screen time, but what he does get is incredible. He leaves an undeniable, massive, and glorious mark on the film as a whole. His presence is felt throughout the entire thing. Paul Dano is just, he's so good in this role. He I don't want to exaggerate too much, but I would argue he is close to as good as Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight and that portrayal of Joker. Not as good, but close. And there's one scene in particular with Batman and Riddler that is absolutely terrifying in all the right ways. And as for the other members of the cast, Zoe Kravitz is a great Selena Kyle. She's pretty much the perfect version of the character, and she has that sort of traditional wit, but she has some really standout moments, and you really care about the relationship between her and Batman. Jeffrey Wright is really great as Gordon. It's not like a super unique performance, but it adds enough to the movie. I do wish there was more of Andy Serkis' Alfred, because what we did get was really good, but I don't think there was enough of him personally. But as for the other villains, Riddler is really great, but so there are some other really good ones too. Penguin in particular is just awesome. They completely transformed Colin Farrell, and it is absolutely clear he is having the time of his life in this movie. Like, he is just high on something, and it's a lot of fun. Falcone was a nice surprise too. I knew he was in the film, but I had no idea he was going to play like an actual big part. And without spoiling anything, they give him a personal connection to Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle that was not shown in any of the marketing, which was a good idea. And John Turturro does a really good job playing him, and he left a much greater impact than expected. And so the villains and all the supporting characters are just as good. The sound design is very well done. Is the way it's used in each scene, especially in like the penguin chase, is a great example. But there are plenty of scenes where the sound is used creatively in epic ways, and so the sound on its own is really good. The score, I think, is probably my favorite Batman score, and that includes the Dark Knight score from Hans Zimmer and the Danny Elfman score from the 1989 movie. The score is actually that good. It's just used in such a fantastic way and adds so much to each scene. And it's an excellently composed movie. It has like this noir like tune to it, and it's very cool. It can be quite epic too. And so it's a very haunting score as well as an epic one, and I think it's one of Michael Giacchino's best scores. And the cinematography is really good too. I don't think there's a shot of this movie that looks bad. Like, every shot is framed in a way that stand out. There's so many memorable shots. Craig Fraser, I swear, is like the next Roger Deakins. Between this, Dune, and Rogue One, he keeps continuing. He's like god tier at his job. There are so many shots that have stuck with me since I saw this movie back in March. The Batman in the car was like flipped over and stuff like that, and he's walking towards Penguin and all of that. It just looks so good. And the production design is really good. The costumes are really good. They add a lot to the mystery and atmosphere of certain scenes, and it's just excellently well done. It's probably the darkest Batman movie yet, and I love about that. It isn't like completely hopeless or like an evil slog or something, or whatever some of the weirdos are complaining about, but it keeps true to the character. It is a Batman movie, and Batman is a dark character. It goes for sort of a David Fincher serial killer like vibe, and it works very well with this kind of movie. One thing to note though is there are plenty of superhero movies that kids should see, and this is probably not one of them. This one is PG-13 in the US, but it certainly pushes the limits. The Riddler does some horrific things in this movie, and the overall tone is not the fun, lighthearted vibe you'll get from like a Marvel movie. It's very serious, and I think that works entirely in the film's favor. But this is something you should go in knowing. It is 3 hours of this too. And so to talk more about like the pacing and stuff like that, it is a very well paced movie. It is 3 hours long. You should know that going in, but it doesn't feel that way. The first 2 hours are slower detective material with an action scene only every once in a while, but it never really ceases to be engaging during those parts. I love seeing Batman solve these riddles and mysteries and stuff like that with Gordon, and learning more about this new take on Gotham as well as its backstory. And I would go as far to say that the first portion of the film is essentially perfect. The third act goes bigger on spectacle, and while it does feel like a bit of a sudden chip, it is still awesome and tons of fun, and I think it was just as long as it needed to be. It's always entertaining, even riveting. and the editing's really good in some scenes. The effects, it doesn't have like a lot of them, but when they are used, they are fantastic. I think there's only one shot in the movie that doesn't look good, which is like this one shot with Batman gliding. But other than that, everything looks absolutely incredible in all the subtle ways it's used. And so it's a very well directed, well acted, well produced, and phenomenal looking sounding movie, dripping with atmosphere from the opening. How's the actual script though? It's still fantastic. This film is very well structured and cleverly written. It all feels super well thought out. The character arcs, the plot, the dialogue, the reveals, the themes, and overall storytelling come together for one of the best written comic movies. Aside from a few small things, this film's script is pretty much a masterwork. And I like the subtlety with the emotional moments, and it makes it stand out from, say, The Dark Knight with like its big, massive crescendo moments. This film avoids that, and while sometimes you can feel slightly awkward because of that, I think it overall pays off really well. And so, is this film like The Dark Knight, where it has like these big, overblown, massive tear-eyed speeches? No, it decidedly does not do that. However, it has these subtle moments that are equally as strong and really get you care about the story and these characters, and pays it off in a way that maybe isn't as loud or epic, but is memorable and it stands out. And I think this is how I feel about the film in general. Some people, seem to be kind of mixed on this, and I kind of understand that. Everyone had insanely high expectations going into this, and some people maybe overblew it. I wisely lowered them just a little bit, and I'm happy to say they were exceeded. And this is exactly what I wanted from. I think that's the trailer now playing is the DC Fandome one from like 2 years ago. This is pretty much exactly what I wanted once that trailer dropped, and I think it's pretty much the perfect Batman film. Not the perfect Batman film, but the perfect Batman film. And so this did not disappoint me as a movie. However, I will have to mention a few flaws in it. And I guess I'll mention one right off the bat. And that's that I feel like Batman is pretty much invincible in this movie. Like, he cannot be brought down. Whether it be gunshots, I can accept gunshots, but as you just saw, something like explosions to the face and all the violent crashes he has, and he just gets up like nothing happened. It's a little silly sometimes. And next, I feel like there's one point where the structure of the film falters slightly is at the end of the second act and beginning of the third, without really spoiling anything. Like, it has like this very sudden, massive shift, and the way it transitions in pace, it just kind of came off as awkward, and I feel like that might help a little bit on a rewatch, but it didn't totally work. And lastly, I wanted more Alfred. I think he needed more screen time to really sell some scenes, and I think it might have slightly improved the movie. And there you go. So those were my thoughts on the Batman, and I'm someone who loves comic book movies. I try to see every theatrical release one each year. At the same time, some of them can be kind of repetitive. We've seen Batman before, we've seen Riddler before, we've seen Catwoman before, we've seen Gordon Alfred so many other countless times. This film, however, stands out amongst all the other Batman films and all the other films in the genre, for that matter. It has this unique feel to it, unlike any other comic book movie. It feels so true to Batman. It sticks with you after the credits. The directing, the cinematography, the stunning art direction, the score, the sound design, the performances, the characters, and all their arcs, and the way the script unfolds. It's a fantastic movie. And it pretty much fires on all cylinders. I don't think it's flawless, but I think it's an excellent movie. And I'd give it like a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.